Joining us now,
Poon,
BJ Boyd.
Hello. And by
From
the way,
Hollywood.
my 26-year-old sister does not know how to ride a bike.
It's a thing.
We always
BJ
And also,
Boyd.
that's not an energy bar. That's a Nature Valley bar. It's very crumbly. It's
That's
the
what I
most
was gonna
crumbly of
say.
bars, and that is not something you want to be eating when you're coughing. It's just gonna like get in there and make you cough more. I'm on your side. I'm trying to help you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I have been coughing a lot lately.
When I saw that bar, I thought, boy, that thing is sandpaper.
It's messy.
There.
It is messy. I still got half of each of one.
Also, not exactly sure there's much nutritional value to it.
Well,
there's
it had
no protein in
a
that.
lot less calories than the other protein bars.
I think it's made of oats and Elmer's glue, possibly. Hopefully, they're not a sponsor. In which case,
Oats.
Oats, got oats.
That sounds good.
Yeah, Elmer's was a sponsor. Thanks a lot.
Oh man, that's tough.
BJ Boyd, writer, producer, showrunner, hot dude.
Thank you.
He has lots of books.
Wrote
I
a
do have a lot of.
graphic novel.
Those are just props, I think.
Didn't you write a graphic novel?
I wrote a couple of graphic novels. I wrote one called Ghost Cop, which I essentially wrote out of spite because I pitched the idea in the Justified room. I was like, there should be Ghost Cop, and this could be the plot. And everyone made fun of me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just do that as a comic book then. And then I did Night Moves with IDW, which is better. It's really good, actually.
Well,
Wrote
you
that
have
first one with your brother, right?
Yeah, I wrote them both with
you wrote
Justin, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know your brother was in the game as well.
I think he was in
Yeah,
before
he's a TV
VJ, right?
writer.
He was in before.
No, he's younger than me.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
no, I pulled him out. Yes, he was in academia, getting paid nothing to work 60 hours a week. And he's like, well, how about I get paid to work 60 hours a week? So he wrote on Fear the Walking Dead, actually, which had Coleman Domingo in it, who is in my show, The Madness, that just came out.
Look at that segue.
Yeah, there you go. Which dropped over the Thanksgiving weekend, I want to say, just last weekend.
That's right, on Thanksgiving, which also the 28th was Coleman's birthday. So, which was all coincidental, supposedly. But maybe there are no coincidences. So I hope you all watched it while you were eating your turkey or ham. We should really rank the no, I'm teasing.
That's a good idea. Maybe
Top
a bracket.
64. No, it must be doing really well because I flipped on my Netflix. I hadn't watched it Thanksgiving. I was busy with family and doing charity work. But I fired up Netflix last night, and it's staring at me right away. Like I hadn't put it in yet as one of, on my watch list.
It's on the top 10 list.
Yeah, it's right there.
It was number one in 41 countries for a few days. And who would have thought there were 41 countries? I mean,
Oh,
who
my
could
gosh. You can't
know
even
that?
name them
I don't know. No.
There's like 20 stands. So once you get over there, that gets a little bit weird. No, but I watched the first episode and I am extremely in. And I don't know, it feels very much, just knowing you a little bit personally, I was surprised that this was not a pilot you pitched and that you joined after the concept had been created because, the idea that there is a very successful black man who is in content who somehow has to set out to take down a global white supremacist conspiracy. I don't know. I'm like, VJ definitely wrote this show.
Well, I mean, one of the things that attracted me to it is that it's a conspiracy thriller. And I mean, listen, let's all be honest. Like, why did they come to like me as opposed to like a white guy? Because Steve Belber, who created it, who wrote the pilot, he's a white guy. He's writing about black characters. So, they had to like partner him with someone of color, as they say. And so I was one of the like 9 people they met with. And I've always wanted to do a conspiracy thriller. I mean, I love like 3 Days of the Condor and all those 70s paranoia thrillers. And I will say that as much as I wanted to do one, now that I've done one, and when you're trying to sit in there for 6 months, like working on the conspiracy, and every time you get notes from the network and you change one little thing, it's like Jenga and it changes the conspiracy. I don't know if I ever want to do a conspiracy thriller. But I think we did a good job, but I'm very hard on the plot and the specifics and making sure it all makes sense in the end. And I think I did a good job. But yeah, that's what attracted me to it is, I want to do something conspiracy thriller. And yes, sure, I can identify with certain things about Muncie Daniels, who's, Coleman Domingo's character, who's the main character, who's a CNN guy, teaches that you pen on the top of the world, or feels like he is, but he's kind of lost his way. And so through unraveling this conspiracy, which he doesn't even want to do, he just wants to not be framed anymore. It's kind of a reversal of, remember in The Fugitive? Tommy Lee Jones famously is like, I don't care, when Harrison Ford's like, I didn't kill my wife. And in a way, we kind of reverse that, where Muncie, people keep trying to tell him, oh, but it goes all the way to the top and it's this and pull this string. And he's like, I don't care. I just want out of this, which I thought was fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because I read a couple interviews that you did, one with your co-creator and one on your own. And it was something that struck me watching the first episode. And yes, the race angle is very interesting to me because there are times when the character seems to forget he's black, but that may also be because I just think of what I conceive of being a black man, like where you constantly have to be a little bit on guard. And there are times where he's really not. But it also does fit with my idea of black male, to be like, I don't really want anything to do with whatever you guys have going on over there. Leave me out of it. So it's a super interesting character.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of our writers in the room, because a lot of our writers were black, also pointed that out also when we got in the room. Because, of course, again, Steve Belber had already written the pilot, although we rewrote a lot of it. He and I did.
Like Steve didn't write the N-word into the pilot, did he?
You know what's so funny is I did write that scene, and he was like, "My name's the only name on this. People are gonna think I wrote that word." I'm like, "Dude, it's fine. I'll just tell them I wrote it," which I did. But no, but when we started the room, and a lot of the black writers were like, "Did this guy forget he's black?" And it's a thing. Whereas, like, but for this character, I buy it because, again, I hate to use this comparison, but you remember in the OJ documentary, he's like, I'm not black, I'm OJ.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and I think
famous black is different, right?
Yeah, I think that Muncie feels that way. He feels like he can go into spaces he wouldn't have been able to before. And so he forgets who he is, which he shouldn't even have to think about it.
Right.
And that's a thing that I think goes unstated mostly. I mean, his ex-wife does point out to him, I can't remember if it's the pilot or the second episode, like, what the hell were you doing walking around that white man's property to begin with? Right. And we did make some changes, to accommodate, because originally in Steve's original pilot, Muncie goes to the door. He's like, he sees light in there. The door's open. He goes in. He goes upstairs. He finds the body in the room. And a lot of the writers were like, this is insane. He would never do that. VJ, would you do that? And I was like, okay, I wouldn't do that either.
Okay, so just leaning in.
So we changed it.
Cracking open the door, being able to see it right there. That's
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty fascinated by something you've talked to us about already, but maybe it was on a football stream or something. Just that this is new for you, working with Netflix, and that when you were on Justified, let's say, for example, that's you write, but you're writing like the season isn't done when you're doing episode 2, right? So you haven't even finished writing. What are you, like 2 or 3 episodes ahead? How does that work?
I would say, I mean, because I've done it on basic cable and on broadcast, and like on SWAT, we were pathologically ahead on SWAT because that's just how Sean Ryan is. So we were like 5 or 6 episodes ahead. But excuse me, normally with broadcast, like when I did Lincoln Rhyme, which no one needs to go watch, the pilot's good. But when I did the Lincoln Rhyme show, we were like 2 episodes ahead, maybe 3, because it catches up to you so fast because they're giving you notes and you're having to go back and do things. And on Justified, we were probably 3 episodes ahead. So yeah, really long answer to a short question, but yeah, around 3 episodes ahead.
But we talked then, so Netflix, it's all in the can. You had the whole thing written before you even start shooting. Is there ever a time, though, because we've talked about the fact that, like, Breaking Bad is a great example of once they air something, while they're not really reacting to internet chatter or something like that, but they could really see the Jesse and Walt chemistry was great. Like, weren't they famously going to kill off Jesse in episode 2, something like that? And then they decided to, well, gosh, this is electric when he's on screen and when they're together, and it ended up, what could Breaking Bad have been without Jesse? I I think I have all that right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it?
I believe that's correct. I believe that's correct. Yes, and I mean, I'm sure there's countless examples.
But you don't get
of
that opportunity then, or do you somewhere? Even when you're shooting, do you then tweak later in the season?
You're constantly tweaking, but it's not the same. It's not the same because you don't have like a finished episode to look at. So yes, like we wrote them all, then we produced them all, then we were in post and editing them all. So there were, I think, more things in post that we had to go back and do ADR, which is when you're like adding words over their back or where they're not looking to like make things make sense, or we ended up cutting entire characters.
But no
because it
extra
just didn't
filming
work.
though. In post,
No,
you can't call everybody back in to.
We can. I mean, there are shows that do, like the Marvel shows famously do that. Like I knew one of the three showrunners that did Echo, which was the Hawkeye spinoff, and they basically reshot that like entire thing like twice on the Hawkeye show. They shot half the season, then went back and reshot them. So they have that money. But no, we did not do that. But yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying, and that is the downside of having them all in the can, because then you're there day one and you're seeing like the Quasi character and Muncie like interact, and you're like, oh crap, like they really work together. We need to add more scenes with the two of them, and you can do it, but you don't have the luxury of being able to do it during the workday because they're on set during the workday. So now we have to like go home in the evening and rewrite a scene for the next episode, and then coordinate with production because we're shooting it in 2 weeks. So it makes it all more difficult. So it's not impossible, but it makes that aspect more difficult. Yes.
Okay, you might have also answered a question I had, but by saying you write it, then you shoot it, then you do post. Like you don't really do a focus group on an episode or something.
It's interesting. I don't know if Netflix does focus groups. If they do, I don't remember them mentioning it to us. We weren't a part of it. Like when I was doing Lincoln Rhyme, we were there for the focus group, and it was just like on TV. We're looking at them through the glass where they can't see us and making fun of the ones who don't like our ideas. And sometimes you get good ideas from them, and sometimes you don't. But we were part of that process. With Netflix, maybe they do it, maybe they don't. But we never heard about it. I guess maybe they trust in their metrics more than in human being focus groups.
Okay, because I know that's a big thing with movies. I think it's Get Out changed the ending because of a focus group. You ever heard that
I actually
story?
did not know that. That's fascinating, actually, because that was also a passion project for Jordan Peele. So I'm surprised by that he would be willing to change it. That's good
because he went to jail.
Yeah,
in his original, I guess.
Huh. Really?
Yeah.
Depressing. Wouldn't have been a hit. No.
Right.
Mistake.
Right.
Yes.
That would have been
too
more
realistic.
Yeah, very real life. But yeah.
I read something else that you said about Netflix of just the notes that they give you back and how it's different with streamers than it is with broadcast or even with cable, that they're not as focused in your scripts on what's happening next, and they actually care about the characters. And that, to me, I'm not in your world. I don't really know how to explain it, but that made a lot of sense to me. And that's got to be something that's cool for you, being a character guy.
Yeah, no, and I'll admit this is funny because all writers always say, and when you're doing staffing meetings, which is when we're interviewing writers to see who we're going to hire, and you'll ask writers, well, what kind of writer are you? Everyone always says they're a character person, because that seems like that's true, because of course we all care about characters. What I realized when I really thought about it is I'm really a plot person. Like that's the thing that I have to work and really think about character. I care, but plot is the thing that I'm really good at, and that's all stacked in my brain and everything. But and I should also specify that in talking about, yes, Netflix does give great deep dive notes on character. FX did also. Like John Landgraf is famous for that. Like he was a writer. He wrote a few episodes of TV before he was an exec, and he's the head of FX, and he is the best at character. No one's better than him. And you should read or listen to any interviews he does on podcasts and stuff. He's an amazing, probably the best TV exec. But Netflix is a huge departure from like the broadcast shows, that I've done, like SWAT and Lincoln Rhyme. And nothing against any of those execs. Well, at least on the SWAT side. Some of the Lincoln execs suck, but
we have a recurring theme here.
But I get it. I get it because plot is what's going to give you the commercial, and you're chasing it with broadcast. Again, you're doing it all at once. But the Netflix folks, I felt, really challenged us in a good way. It's like, okay, well, why are they doing this? They really pushed us in ways that I was not used to. Those were not the notes I expected from execs. I expected, like you were saying, like literally going back to theme. I remember like on Lincoln Rhyme, we had a call and they were like, something needs to blow up in the first minute. I'm not even joking. Like on like episode 2 or 3 or something. Like, we can't have people tuning out. They were so like afraid and panicky, and Netflix is not like that. Which I guess when your stock is trading at 900 or whatever it is, my God, I can't believe I sold it a year ago.
You're talking about Fang stocks?
Fang.
It's just Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google,
Yeah.
but whatever.
Oh, sorry. If I knew that, I wouldn't have sold it. If I knew the acronyms, I'd be so rich now.
Yeah.
Well, Jake sold his Bitcoin.
Yeah. Took a loss
You
on that
did.
one. A long time ago, and I didn't have a whole
Oh.
one. I had a quarter of one, and I made a few grand. I needed money, whatever. Get off me. Back up.
You're listed. Are you listed as executive producer?
Yeah, executive producer, showrunner, whatever. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Those are interchangeable. I had always understood executive producer means the money man.
Right. I remember my father telling me that when I was a child, when I was
Yeah.
asking what the credits meant. And it's like, the thing is, producer can mean so many things when you're looking at those credits. It could be someone who like works for like Peter Chernin, it was a Chernin production. It could be someone there. It could be someone who really was the producer. It could be the line producer, who's the one on set who's actually hires and is in charge of the crew. It can be a writer, but showrunners are generally credited as executive producers. Yeah.
Okay, and you're a showrunner, but you did not. Showrunner usually means you created the show.
Not always. Oftentimes the creator is one of the showrunners, but they generally partner you with somebody if you haven't like run a show before, which Steve had not run a show before. He would have been perfectly capable of doing it, but they wanted to partner with someone who'd done it before. And a lot of times now you end up with co-showrunners, partially because the studios and networks are trying to have, a smaller, less expensive writers' room. So then, because the showrunners are the only ones who stay with the show with streamers, the writers don't get to go to set and produce their episodes and stuff. And that's the thing. One of the things the strike was about that we were trying to change, and we got a few concessions, but still, the creator and whoever's co-showrunning with him or her are the ones who are with it to the end. So a lot of times it'll end up being two people. It's impossible to do as one person.
I remember you saying a couple years ago, just offhand, I hope this was on the show and not off. We're talking about taxes and write-offs, and you said something to the effect of like, yeah, I mean, I do research for shows, and you said something like camping. That's something that.
Oh
like,
yeah. No.
Then this show opened. I was like, it makes sense now. This is a guy out in the Poconos.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I finally tied all together. Like, this is how taxes
That's funny,
work.
yeah, because I have been. It's funny. I have been working. I was working on this show because when I started working on this show in January of 2022, and it just came out. It's insane.
That is wild. So, just from the climate, did you guys talk much when you were making a show about a white supremacist group, and it's an online thing, and the culture is very hot at the time in 2022? Like, did you talk about how is this going to play out to people? How is this going to be received? Because it's weird. It's very much about what the world is like right now.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but we knew that streaming timeframes are so long. We had no idea when it would air, so we wanted it to feel somewhat evergreen. Although, in looking back, and I can't remember if I had this thought then, but after the results of this election, of course, myself and Steve and our producer Caitlin were like texting about like, is this kind of sucks, but it's good for the show maybe. But in really thinking about it, I think that we've been in the madness since 2016, no matter who wins.
Yeah.
Like, we're in something changed, and now we are in this new era. And so I don't think that it would have mattered, honestly, who won. Maybe it would have mattered for liberals, but I think that if Kamala had won, then maybe we would have had a slightly different audience. And and I also want to say, and this is not too much of a spoiler, that although the show does start out being like, oh, this is like black pundit framed for murdering white supremacist. It's not in the end about white supremacy so much. It's like it is about that being one of many tools being used by those in power, right? It's not like you're going to just have, and I just want to say that, like, for listeners and everything, it's not that you're going to have like race crammed down your throat constantly, but that is kind of how it begins.
No, that makes
So
sense.
stay tuned.
That makes sense.
Indeed.
Yeah, I got a very like Mr. Robot-y type feel. I don't know if you were into that show or not. It was a
First
little
season.
yeah, and it got out there, but yeah, that was sort of the type of vibe without it being too much of a psychological thing I got in the first episode. I was also wondering, I guess we could just do this later. He's staying for the news?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we could
But
do
I wanted to ask him something a little more about this.
Yeah, for sure. I had a writer's question about the news. There was a CEO gunned down in broad daylight, which felt
dude,
very
I know.
much.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. And like Steve and Caitlin on our text thread were texting this morning about how it had madness vibes. And like you'll see as you continue in the show how like even up to the finale, there's like a scene in the finale which is eerily similar, honestly. And I saw people, I don't know what you'd call it on blue skying about it. I have not abandoned Twitter. I'm not that libtarded, but I am on Blue Sky as well. And I saw people saying this United CEO thing, it's got the madness vibes. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay.
That's
Did
got to feel
Netflix
cool.
arrange for this man to die for advertising for the show? Wow. Netflix's advertising department
he was going to go, and it turns out it might fit in with the theme of the show. But yeah, I saw that story, was like, this feels like something he would write.
It's wild. And you saw he'd written I'm sorry, I don't want to spoil the news.
We'll get
so I'll
to
wait
it.
until you get there.
Yeah.
Spoil it. Yeah, I'm trying to find VJ and Blue Sky.
Can you spoil real life?
Are you on the Sky now? He's skying it up?
Oh, I'm on the Sky for sure.
I haven't ever blue skied, but I'm on there. I'm on there, and I
Our show's
lurk,
on there
I
too.
Oh, really?
Someone.
Then I need to follow you. I should probably follow you on there.
Yeah, I'm trying to find you, but it's just there's just an article about you. It's not giving me. Oh, here we go. People. No results for VJ Boyd.
You did put periods in? There's no periods in my name.
No, I didn't
So
put
if
any
you just
periods.
Okay, well, I'm there. I'll find you. It's like Last of the Mohicans.
Find me, Bracket Dan. Is it weird? I would imagine you're having some people like reach out to you and like, oh man, the finale was great or something, and then you're talking to us, and then we watched episode 1. Like for it all to be dropped at the same time.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was talking to a friend yesterday who was like, I had to like, or she was talking about how she has a strong temptation always to binge every show on streaming because she loves it so much. So she made a rule for herself because she just won't go to bed that she'll take a 5-minute break after every episode to decide if she really wants to continue. I have the opposite problem. I don't want to binge anything. I want to watch one episode and then I'll come back and watch another one next week or in a few days.
Like think
So
about it a little bit.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Let it sink in.
Let it sit. It was interesting to hear an opposite viewpoint. So I guess people experience TV in all different ways, but like Netflix very much understands because they're the only one who I believe who every show they always drop them all. Like a lot of the other streamers will like go back and forth, or Apple will drop. Apple does weekly. Some will drop 3, etc. And I kind of prefer that, but I know that's just because that's how I watch TV. But Netflix understands that a lot of their audience does want to binge. And what I realized in notes they were giving us early on is, oh, they need all the episodes to have a similar vibe. They need to feel the same so that it's almost like a warm bath for 8 episodes. It's not like all of a sudden it's cold and all of a sudden it's this. It has to all have the same vibe. And for 8 episodes, I suppose you could do that. That would be very annoying for 20, but it's a different way of doing TV. And it'll be interesting. I wonder, like 50 years from now, if that'll still be going on or what these shows will like feel like then if that's not a thing anymore.
It's an 8-hour movie.
In a way, it's not really structured like a movie, though. Like I know people say that, but I think that would be a mistake to structure a TV show like a movie because then you're doing a 3-act structure. Like you're going to have 2 or 3 episodes of introductory stuff, and I think that's a mistake. Like I think I like a show that I really like on Apple is Silo that Graham Yost did. who did Justified, and a lot of the Justified writers do it. And it has a retro feel in that it's structured like an older TV show in a very comfortable way, which Graham is great at. But a thing that they do that's odd, and I don't want to spoil it, but is that in the pilot of Silo, they have certain characters you're following, and in at the end of that episode, then you're introduced to the main character. And then so it's almost like there's two pilots. And I think that's really cool from that's different from a TV creation standpoint. But when I was talking to Apple execs about it, they made a point, and I think it makes sense. It's like you're asking the audience to deal with two different pilots in a way, two introductions. And that's not how we're used to like watching TV. We want to be like, okay, we watched this episode, we gave it a chance, now we know what it's about. We don't want to have to do that twice. And I thought that was an interesting point. Anyway, I went far afield of your question, as is what I'm doing today. So.
Do you have any input on the music?
Yes, and I will say that Phil Klein, who was our composer, did an amazing job. I've several people have commented on the music to me, and I love that it's not the typical, like, I don't know, going back to Enemy of the State, Paranoia kind of music, or the Marvel music, which just always just sounds the same. That was very important to me. But I will also say that Steve, the Belber, who my co-showrunner, he was very, very involved in needle drops, like as in the songs that we used, and we like he was picking songs, like sending us songs in the middle of the night. So he should get credit for like there's a Radiohead needle drop in one. And I will say in the pilot, we were this close to being able to use Justify My Thug, the Jay-Z song, because that's what we wanted Muncie to be listening to when he's driving out to the Poconos.
Instead of Tribe?
Yes. For a man of his age, that's the cool like song that he'd be listening to as he's going out here. And the thing we were warned about is, you're never going to get it. Jay-Z's so difficult and so expensive. We got his sign off. There's tons of samples in it. The one sample we couldn't get, and it wasn't even a money thing. It was Madonna. We couldn't, like, her people were like, we can't get hold of her. We can't, sorry. Which is like, because she doesn't need the money. She doesn't care. She just doesn't respond. So because they just couldn't get her to respond, we couldn't use it. We were like, we took it to the last minute, and we just had to pull the trigger on something else. But maybe we can put that in the DVD extras.
You got the CNN logo. God, that made me happy. Not because I'm a fan of CNN or anything, but just because, to speak of Mr. Robot, it's so distracting to see fake news networks.
Yes, and that's another thing Netflix is
crazy.
Great. That's another thing Netflix is great about, is that they're like, as long as we're not disparaging these other companies or brands, we can use them. And I know that for some reason, some of the legacy companies like broadcast and cable companies won't let you do that. I'm not sure why, but Netflix has never been afraid of it. That we were able to use whatever brands we want. It's great.
Broadcast radio was like that too.
What? Like what? What would they do?
Well, like if you just mentioned like, oh man,
like a competitor,
the Pizza Hut triple decker was a great pizza in the '90s. Called in of like, well, what about every other pizza company that ever existed? That
or the ones that advertise, yeah.
And also, you're not Gordon.
Yeah.
So
two things were said. So you're going to stay through the news and all that? VJ Boyd?
I would love to.
Hollywood's VJ Boyd. When you moved to Hollywood in 2008, did you know, like, did you have a friend who was a writer for a show or something? Like, how... the story of VJ Boyd seems like it's a great story, but it's like, oh, you were working in finance or you were working in business, and then all of a sudden, no, but I have a passion to be a writer, so I go back to school, get a little writing in, and head to Hollywood with my little knapsack, my little stick with the
bindle,
the thing over there. Yeah.
I mean, the nutshell of it is that, I was working at IBM for 6 years in sales, but like 3 years into that, I realized I was not happy doing it. What I always say, because I do think this is actually funny, is I started thinking everyone here is crazy. They're all nuts. And I was like, no. They're not nuts. They're just enjoying what they're doing. So the fact that you hate what you're doing makes you feel like they're all crazy. And I realized, okay, I'm just in the wrong place. So then I went to grad school thinking, okay, I'm going to teach, because I can do something that matters, and I can teach writing. I love to write, like as a hobby, and then I'll have more time to write. I quickly realized when you're teaching, you don't have time to do anything. And so, but I was still doing it. I was still trying to get my literature degree. And one of my instructors in a screenwriting class, Tony Daniel, the novelist, not the comic book artist, like really liked my writing. He's an acclaimed science fiction novelist, and he told me, "Hey, you're really good. You should like move to LA and do this for a living." And I was like, "How? How does that work?" Because I only knew about movies, and in movies, you write a script and you either sell it or you don't. And if you don't, then that was a waste of 6 months of your time and you didn't make any money. And that did not seem like a smart career move to relocate to do. But Tony talked to me about how TV works because he knew the Battlestar Galactica guys and was like, this is how TV works. You can start as an assistant. And it seemed like there's a career path, right? And that made sense to me. It seemed logical. And so I moved to LA like maybe a year after I had that conversation with him, and was an assistant for a few years. Which, by the way, I did not realize at the time how lucky I was to even get an assistant job. It's really difficult to get, and got that and ended up as an assistant season 1 of Justified, and then.
But
Graham
did you
liked
know
my
anyone
writing
going
also,
out there? Did someone to
No,
stay with?
like
Or?
okay, so this is funny. No. Well, I had a good year in sales at IBM, not because I was a good salesman, but I got lucky and I got a really big commission check, and I was like, this will tide me over for 2 years in LA. 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
No, I'd say 6 months or so. I mean, I was in huge debt by the time, like being an assistant because you're making nothing. But no, Tony's friend Mike Taylor, who's a writer on Battlestar Galactica and Turn and a bunch of other stuff, he was like, "I'll introduce you to Mike. Maybe he could hire you as an assistant on Battlestar." So I came out, and I love Mike, great guy. So we went to lunch in Hollywood one of the first weeks I was out here. He did not hire me as an assistant. I know now that it's like that was a very kind of ridiculous thing for Tony to suggest, as if like there weren't like 100 people banging on Mike's door that he'd known for 10 years that wanted these assistant jobs. But he took me to lunch, and you know what he mostly talked to me about? Because this would have been 2008. He mostly talked to me about how great Obama was and how I should vote for Obama, because I was like a Republican at the time. I mean, he was raised homeschooling kid in Dallas. I'm a Republican, right? And I was like, yeah, I don't know about this this healthcare thing. It's like I've read about how Canadian healthcare kind of sucked. He's like, I know ideology is hard to get out of. He talked to me for 30 minutes about how I should vote for Obama. So that was the closest I got to knowing anybody in LA.
Who'd you vote for that year?
I voted for McCain.
Ooh, okay.
And when I told the people on Justified that after I got the assistant job, one of the guys, and I won't say who it was, he was like, his running joke about me, because Justified was kind of old school in that it was kind of fratty and kind of hazing kind of a thing. He was like, I would come in the room, he'd like, vote McCain, motherfucker. I'd forgotten about that.
What books are you reading now?
Reading the Robert Heinlein book, Stranger to Strange Land, which I've never read before, and I don't love so far, honestly. But I think just the way Heinlein writes, I read him so much as a kid that I think it's just it's I don't know. I don't love it so far, and also I didn't know that's where Elon got grok from.
Interesting.
I think Elon thinks of himself as the character in Stranger in a Strange Land, so that's kind of tough for me to pull out of. I'm like, I was reading science fiction to get away from real life.
See, what you guys need to do is there's a perfect sweet spot that I live in where I suppose I'm motivated and smart enough to read books, but I'm too dumb to know if they're not good. So every book I read is awesome. I'm like, well, I've spent
But you
the
read
time.
a lot of nonfiction also.
Yeah,
and
exclusively. Yeah, but
okay.
every time I'm like, this is great because I spent the time reading it.
Yeah,
It must be awesome.
See, I don't think that. Yeah, I'm currently reading a book that I'm not sure if it's good or not, but I'm like 200 pages in. I'm like, well, I'm 200 pages in.
Yeah.
So I am not. I got to see it through. Maybe it'll get a little better, or maybe it's just me.
They should have put an explosion in the first few pages.
That's right.
It hooked you.
Did you? Yeah. Did you see that Jake has an article in the paper?
I haven't read it yet, though. I was literally.
But
like,
you're aware of
last
it?
Night on yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so I guess I just didn't want you to be totally lost because we have a little running thing going today, and so I'll just go ahead and fire this up.
How did a piece of human garbage find the tenacious spirit to go from gulping a handle of Tito's before lunch to reuniting with his often ignored children? Let's listen.
In rehab, Jake started working out again. He journaled like crazy. A FaceTime call was where his wife noticed a difference. His skin was clear, his eyes were bright, like something flipped inside of him. He was the person she met 14 years ago. He told her, "This is the best I've felt in my adult life."
Don't miss the exciting conclusion of how a railroad hobo uncovers a second chance at life at the cost of missing an entire month of work.